As Paris stood still on a bitter morning in January 1793, King Louis XVI was led through the city from his prison at the Temple to the Place de la Révolution, where the guillotine awaited. Louis addressed the crowd in a clear voice. "I die innocent, I pardon my enemies, and I hope that my blood will be useful to the French, that it will appease God's anger." At this point, the drums began to roll, and Louis's final words were cut off. His head would soon follow the same fate. But what actually happened to the fallen king's head? Was it ravaged upon by the crowd, or did it survive, remaining as a mummified royal relic to this day? France teetered on the edge of bankruptcy in the late 18th century, drained by its costly support of the American Revolution and King Louis XVI's lavish spending. Economic hardship gripped the nation, fueling public outrage against deep-rooted social inequalities and government corruption. Tensions boiled over into the French Revolution. At the outset of the revolution, Louis XVI presented himself as a supporter of reform. However, his hesitation and reluctance to approve key revolutionary decrees, such as the abolition of the noble privileges and the Declaration of the Rights of Man, quickly revealed his deep unease with the shifting tides of power. After the storming of the Bastille on July 14, 1789, tensions escalated, and on October 5th, a furious mob, driven by food shortages and revolutionary fervour, marched on Versailles. They forced the royal family to relocate to Paris, effectively making them prisoners in the Tuileries Palace. Stripped of his authority and increasingly desperate, Louis made a fateful attempt to escape in June 1791, hoping to rally loyalist support beyond Paris. Disguised and travelling under the cover of night, he and his family fled towards the eastern border. But in the town of Varennes, he was recognised, arrested, and returned to Paris. A turning point that shattered what little trust remained between the king and his people. By 1792, with France at war and the monarchy in freefall, revolutionaries put him on trial for treason. The verdict was swift and unforgiving. Louis XVI, once the ruler of France by divine right, was sentenced to death by his own subjects. On the cold, foggy morning of January 21, 1793, French King Louis XVI made the hour-and-a-half journey through the city of Paris from the Temple, the fortified medieval monastery where he is imprisoned, to the Place de la Révolution, where the scaffold for his execution was assembled. The blade of the guillotine flashed in the cold morning light before it fell, severing the king's head with a sickening thud. The executioner's assistant lifted the severed head and displayed it to the crowd. Cries of "Long live the Republic" rang out before the crowd began to sing La Marseillaise. The body and the head were transported to the modest cemetery of Madeleine, nowadays found in the 8th arrondissement near the Rue d'Anjou. The new revolutionary order forbade bearing Louis XVI's remains alongside those of his father, the Dauphin Louis de France, at Sens. Two vicars who'd sworn allegiance to the revolution conducted a brief memorial service at the church. One of them, Damereux, later recalled the solemn moment. Upon arriving at the cemetery, I called for silence. A detachment of gendarmes revealed the body, dressed in a white vest, grey silk breeches, and matching stockings. We chanted vespers and the service for the dead. Then, following an executive order, the body, still lying in its open coffin, was cast onto a bed of quicklime at the bottom of the pit and covered with earth. The soil was firmly tamped down to prevent any future disturbance. His head was placed at his feet. With that, the fallen king vanished into a hastily dug, unmarked grave, erased but not forgotten. In 1799, Napoleon took power of the French First Republic. However, by 1814 he was forced to abdicate the throne after allied Austrian, Prussian and Russian forces vanquished his army and occupied Paris. With France occupied by coalition forces, the victorious European powers sought to restore the pre-revolutionary order, which included reinstating the Bourbons to the throne. The Bourbon claimant, Louis XVIII, was invited back to France and declared king. In January 1815, Louis XVIII ordered the exhumation of the remains of Louis XVI and his wife, Marie Antoinette, so they could be given a proper royal burial. Before the graves were disturbed, witnesses were interviewed to help pinpoint the exact location. These included grave diggers, clergy, administrative officials, and the new owner of the cemetery, who had marked the site with distinctive foliage to identify the King and Queen's final resting place. Marie Antoinette's remains were discovered first, identified by her coffin, a layer of quicklime, remnants of her clothing, and the clear evidence that her head had been severed. The next day, the search led to Louis XVI's grave. He'd been buried 12 feet deep in an open coffin, with his head placed between his knees. The grave diggers hesitated before unearthing the fragile remains, their shovels scraping against brittle fragments of bone and cloth reduced to dust by time and quicklime. Little more than sediment remained of his head. His clothing had completely disintegrated. All that was left were teeth and some strands of hair. On January 21st, 1815, exactly 22 years after Louis XVI's execution, his and Marie Antoinette's ashes were reinterred at the Basilica of Saint-Denis with great ceremony. The following year, King Louis XVIII commissioned a funerary monument, sculptured by Edmond Gall, to honour his brother's memory. Though Louis XVI's head had long been reduced to little more than sediment, recent scientific advancements have unravelled a mystery surrounding his execution with the help of the severed head of another French king. Born in 1553, Henry IV ruled France for over 2 decades before his assassination by a Catholic fanatic in 1610. After his burial in the royal chapel at Saint-Denis, his remains rested undisturbed until the French Revolution, when a mob ransacked the chapel, tossing Henry IV's body and other royal remains into a pit. Amidst the chaos, a severed head, believed to be Henry IV's, was preserved. This head, mummified over time, became crucial in solving a chilling legend. A handkerchief, soaked in the blood of Louis XVI during his execution, was said to have been kept in a gourd as a macabre souvenir. By matching DNA from the blood on the handkerchief to that of the mummified head of Henry IV, scientists confirmed that the bloody handkerchief was indeed the blood of Louis XVI, while the severed head did indeed belong to King Henry IV of France. This groundbreaking analysis revealed a compelling link between the two kings, shedding new light on an infamous chapter in French history. Though his head succumbed to the blade of the guillotine and was quickly eroded by both time and quicklime, the legacy of Louis XVI endures today. Woven into the fabric of French history, a cautionary tale of monarchy's downfall and revolution's relentless tide.